Have you ever stopped and thought about the things you really love about your favorite game music? What makes you want to listen to it over and over again? We all know what it's like to have the same melody play in our heads to the point where we literally cease to function as human beings because whatever we're hearing on mental repeat is just so catchy. In reality, desiring to know the how and why behind the music we love forces us to consider the foundation of music itself. It invites us to define and structure the ineffable force that is music to convey ideas and emotions. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Gabe, the audio architect. Welcome to my channel devoted to exploring the how and why behind video game music and audio. Let's get into it. Today we'll be composing an original piece of music based on the tune from Kirby, Green Greens. We analyzed that piece of music in my last video, so once you're done watching this, I recommend that you watch it to familiarize yourself with some essential music theory that will enhance your compositions. The link will be in the description below. Also, before we get started, please consider hitting those like, subscribe, and bell icons, and sign up for my newsletter by going to my website for free video game music and other instructional content. Before we compose a single note, I want to share a concept that will hopefully prompt you to approach your creative process in a new and more efficient way. Plan more, compose less. Most creative people rush into a task without really thinking it through, causing a great deal of guesswork and time figuring it out as they go. There's nothing wrong with this, as it's part of the creative process. However, introducing structure and strategy increases the likelihood of success. When you organize your thoughts around the creative task you're undergoing, considering each factor from beginning to end, you will find that finishing high-quality music that you're happy with becomes increasingly more effortless. With this approach, you spend more time and effort creating a plan, but less time writing music you then have to revise or discard entirely. So what factors must we consider before we start creating an effective structure and plan of action? The first thing we have to consider is context. Context is everything. In comprehending the context of the music as it relates to our game, it informs us of three crucial factors. 1, the player's actions. 2, how those actions relate to the environment. And 3, how the player's actions and environment fit into the game's overall aesthetic. Knowing these three factors will influence our harmonic and melodic approach, the instrumentation needed, and the production style. So for this demonstration, I'll be composing for a game called Riddledale. Riddledale is a top-down open-world RPG adventure that centers around solving riddles and fighting creatures on an island full of secrets. Ooh, sounds interesting. It's a game that I've continually written music for, so today we'll be writing some music for a beachy island type environment where our main character Wilburn will explore, interact with NPCs, and perform various tasks. I chose Green Greens as our reference because it can lend some harmonic and melodic content that will work well with the aesthetic of Riddledale. Even though I'm considering instrumentation, arrangement, and style of production, the remainder of this video will be focused on composing the melodic motifs and harmonic structure, which will serve as a foundation of our piece. Now that we're ready to start composing, we want to start by creating a strong movement in the bass. Establishing our bass movement will help to inform our note choice and chord voicings later in our composition. Let's review Green Greens to take inspiration from the aspects that will work well with our original piece. Upon looking at the A section of Green Greens, we see the use of 2/5 turnarounds, secondary dominants, and first and second inversion chords. The 2/5 turnarounds and secondary dominants give us a strong sense of harmonic direction and resolution. This inspires me to find potential areas where I can create tension and release by using this type of harmony. Once I can identify the areas most appropriate for tension and release, I will build the rest of the chord progression around these measures. We'll put our first 2/5 turnaround here at measure 5. Now let's create a way of getting there harmonically. The goal here is to create a catchy and satisfying bass note movement that feels like it's moving the listener forward, leading us to an eventual point of resolution. To achieve this, I'll add a 6 minor 7 chord in measure 3, preceded by the 1 chord. I'm going to use A as our bass note again before the 2/5 turnaround. However, instead of using A minor 7, I'll use A7, making this 5/7 of 2. This prepares the listener for the 2/5 turnaround and is a way of mirroring the bass note movement we hear in the first two measures while presenting something unexpected. Next, I want to mirror a similar idea used in Green Greens with chord inversions from measure 6 to the end. However, instead of using inversions to create ascending movement, as seen in Green Greens, I want our bass note to move down in half steps to get us to our 5/7 chord before resolving back to the 1 chord. This creates descending chromaticism in the bass and allows us to introduce a new harmonic concept in measures 8 to 9. Here we see a 2-5 relationship resolving to G7. However, instead of using a secondary dominant, we will use a tritone substitution, or sub-5. In this case, we would analyze this as sub-5 of 5. This is called a tritone substitution because we're using a 5-7 chord starting on the tritone of the original secondary dominant. The original secondary dominant, 5-7 of 5, would be D7, but if we were to play a 5-7 chord starting from the tritone of D7, we would get a flat 7. The tritone substitution, used in measure 8, allows us to create a moment of tension and release while maintaining descending chromatic notes in the bass. I'm going to finish this section with a G7 first inversion, giving us a half-step resolution from B to C in the bass. Now let's listen to this chord progression. As you can see, the root motion of the bass works well, as it always moves and resolves in a way that just feels right. Now let's focus on the melody. In Green Greens, we saw the use of a simple yet effective motific writing through the repetition of this rhythmic figure. I'm going to emulate something similar by using this 8th note triplet figure as the central motif in our melody. I'm going to intersperse the same rhythmic figure we see in Green Greens, only I'll use it mainly to introduce chromatic approach notes at times where I'm passing from one chord to another. My goal with the melody is to write something simple, repetitive, and well, cute, to fit in with the overall aesthetic of Riddledale and the environment we're writing this piece for. You'll notice that at the beginning of almost every measure, the notes used are E and C. By repeating these notes, I'm continuing to emphasize the tonal center of our key. I'm also keeping the melody simple and sparse, allowing the chords to do the work of moving this piece along. If the chords and melody are fighting for space, it'll create difficulties later on when arranging and mixing this piece. Therefore, by simplifying the melody, I'm leaving room for interesting counterpoint and other musical ideas to be played by secondary instruments. Similarly to Green Greens, our B section will modulate up a minor third to the key of E flat. As you can see, the melody is primarily made up of these two rhythmic figures, reflecting the themes found in the A section. The section starts with a 2-5 turnaround, resolving to 6 minor 7. This is typically called a deceptive resolution because we're resolving to 6 minor 7 instead of 1 major. When we arrive at measure 5, we hear the bass line mimic a similar idea from our A section. The bass line descends chromatically to A flat over C, which is 6 in first inversion. I chose this chord because with C in the bass, it creates a subtle sense of resolution as we arrive at F minor 7, which starts at 2-5-1. This section ends on G, which similarly to Green Greens is 5-7 of 6, and our current key, E flat. However, G is preparing our ears to return to the A section in the key of C major. Therefore, this can also be considered a 5-1 resolution, for this is what's harmonically implied. Now we'll listen to both sections all the way through. As you can hear, there are elements of this composition that take clear inspirations from our reference piece, Green Greens. This reference piece provided a roadmap to follow, quickly inspiring my ideas and dramatically accelerating my workflow. Using reference material when composing can be highly beneficial in eliminating stagnation and indecision because you are mimicking ideas that already capture what you are seeking to achieve. Sometimes as a composer, you may need a little structure and direction if you struggle with writing melodies, chord progressions, or rhythm sections. Therefore, a reference piece can be a fantastic tool. However, there is a downside to this. Because you are composing within a structure already created by a reference track, you need to ensure that the reference you choose to inspire your composition will match the aesthetic you are going for before any changes in the melody, harmony, or groove. Even if you change all three of these things including using entirely different instrumentation, there will still be some residue left from the reference. The only way to avoid this is to break apart and rearrange the components of the reference so drastically that it no longer resembles the reference. In that case, you might as well not use any reference at all, as it completely defeats the purpose of a pre-composed structure to channel your original ideas into. So how do you choose an effective reference? It all comes back to context. As I mentioned, you need to know the context of the music as it relates to the game. I recommend gathering artwork, footage, and as much material related to your context as possible. Once you do this, play your reference track against the visual material. If the reference piece works well initially, then you could be assured that using it to inspire your original ideas will give you the results you're looking for. Even if you're composing game music not designated for a specific game, using pre-existing footage from the genre you are composing for is still highly beneficial. By doing this, you could see if your compositions match the emotionality and aesthetic you are seeking to achieve. Now that we have our composition's melodic and harmonic structure, we're going to fill in the arrangement to see if we can use this piece for our desired context. If you're a game composer, I encourage you to emulate the process demonstrated in this video and post your experience in the comments below. Stay tuned for next week's video, where we take what we've composed and put it in our DAW. Thanks for watching. Wishing you all the best on your musical journey. Have an excellent day and stay blessed.